Nvidia stock, of course, selling off on the Deepseek announcements over the weekend. Deepseek now the number one downloaded app on the Apple iTunes Store. What is going on with Nvidia? Nvidia Stock, NVDA is the ticker symbol. My take on this, first and foremost, one of the things I like to say about the Chinese is this. They don't always tell the truth. They make themselves out to be pretty awesome. And it always ends up being, yeah, wait, hold on, that doesn't quite add up. And I think a lot of what we're going to see in the next couple of weeks and months is, great, they've got a product. It competes with ChatGPT. Totally awesome. But we don't necessarily believe how you got there, given the information you've given us. There's some plausibility. There's some not-so-ability. Because of that, Nvidia itself, they've got their earnings release coming up here, I think, in about 3 weeks' time. Nvidia stock, NVDA, I think is probably going to continuously increase. They are not necessarily overvalued at this price given a value investment standpoint. But this is a growth stock. This is a stock that you can sit there and put together numbers, look at it and say, wow, this stock is Nvidia stock is growing quickly. They're just slightly overvalued, but then they come up with their next quarter and the revenues just blow out continuously. So given that, Nvidia stock might continue forward, but at the same time, a lot of the stocks are starting to waver. We haven't seen a whole lot of upward movement in the semiconductor industry. I just did a video on SOXX ETF, the semiconductor ETF. Take a look at that. Basically, when you look at that one, it's kind of gone flatline over the past couple of months. I don't see a whole lot more upside. We'll see with NVIDIA's announcement. I think it's 3 weeks from now we get their latest earnings. This is a breakdown as to what goes on, taking a look at their numbers and asking the question, okay, this Deepseek, is it really going to rattle the cages as much as we think? Let's jump in. I'll do a full analysis on NVIDIA stock, breaking down all the financials. Let's take a look at the numbers. Here's a look at NVIDIA stock, NVDA, the 4-hour bar chart. We're basically at the same price we were in July. All right, we've not seen a whole lot more upside movement. My take on NVIDIA itself is that it's kind of run its course on overwhelmingly, surprisingly good news, and we might see growth on a slower pace. We've been seeing that. Therefore, NVIDIA stock itself probably won't grow as rapidly moving forward. Did rebound from the big sell-off. Again, you look at this chart. We were here in October. We were here in August and July. We sold NVIDIA stock sold off from its peak in sort of the January rally there, the Christmas rally, whatever that was, right around the holiday. So moving forward, when we break this down, here is a look at SOXX ETF, the red bar, from very late 2019. Now, as an economist, one of the things I learned from Ben Bernanke back, 2 decades ago, start at the biggest economic event and move forward and ask the question, what's happened there? And for me, the latest big economic event, of course, COVID. Plain and simple. So that's where all my sort of long-term charts start, is what's happened since the COVID shutdowns. And as you can see, now NVIDIA stock, of course, took off long before the COVID issues because of AI really taking off in 2024, of course. That was I think, January 24 when things just lit up like a huge fireworks show. Then it was also summer 23 when I know we saw a big jump in AI stocks there as well. All right, so where are we going to go from here? NVIDIA clearly has outperformed SOXX, which is the broader semiconductor ETF. There's SMH as well. Outperformed by a long shot. Now, I own Broadcom in my main IRA account. I've owned it for a number of years. Won't sell it. Just put a video up on that. NVIDIA clearly has outperformed Broadcom during that period of time as well. But when I say the Chinese lie, the lack of consistencies in certain kind of ways in their numbers, they're always unbelievable. As an economist, I remember when we were seeing numbers in the late 1990s, early 2000s, we were like, wow, that's unbelievable. We still don't believe them. So, yeah, Nvidia chips might have been in there. Did it really only cost $6 million? 3% of what we're putting out? Is the power efficiency really there? Those are some questions that I think we're probably going to see scientists evaluate over the next 6 months and say, yeah, it's just, we're not so sure. But at the same time, so how does that break down for Nvidia? That's really kind of the big question. Where do we go from here from Nvidia? I still believe that Nvidia is going to see a ramp up in its continued operations and revenues, but maybe not at the same pace. And because of that, now it's a question of forward earnings. From a value investing standpoint, Nvidia isn't too far off. I'll break those numbers down real quick, but let's take a look at their latest quarterly numbers. Here is Q3 2024 with $35.1 billion in total revenue. Gross margin 74.6%, which is solid. Operating margin 62.3%. So they're not really spending too much on operating costs. Net margins coming in at 55%. This is a cash cow. For every dollar they bring in, they keep 55 cents. That Nvidia is a cash cow. And with their continued growth rates, that kind of cash, people are chasing it. Earnings per share, 81 cents. This is adjusted. Of course, they had a split going way back. Price to earnings ratio, 56.2. The S&P 500 is trading right around, call it 30. So these guys are, I think it's actually 28.5. These guys are about double on a price to earnings ratio. But when you look at projected revenue for 2025, this is where things become kind of eye-popping. And the question is, can they still hit these numbers? I don't believe that companies are all of a sudden sit there and say, we need to retool everything we've ever considered in life. And therefore, all these billions of dollars we've spent investing, we're going to stop doing that right now. Nvidia is still going to see its revenue stream coming in. Will they hit the 198.5, which is factored in Nvidia stock price? That's something from an Nvidia stock analysis standpoint, you have to ask that question. Will they continue to hit this, or has that run its course? Projected earnings per share, 444 for 2025, continuing on for 544 should they hit these numbers. All right, let's break everything down. Treasury yield. United States Treasury yield is your standard bearer of, okay, is this a good investment? Well, you can buy $4.44 worth of growth from Nvidia at the price of $127.46 right now. Your yield is 3.48%. That's competitive. The thing with Nvidia is one of two things. They could continue to outperform their own projections, number one. Or number two, they could miss and underperform. Then all of a sudden, Nvidia stock trading at 127 could all of a sudden drop on its own factors. Sure, AI, everybody's ramping up, and Nvidia is taking advantage of that, and we've seen how hyper progressive Nvidia stock has shot up. But will it last forever? Everybody has to come to terms with the fact that eventually that hyper growth in revenue for Nvidia stock is going to wane at some point. Are we going to see it this year, 2025? Truth is, we go back to the economy. The United States economy, we're seeing shifts in policy. We'll just call it what it is, which would be somewhat disruptive in some kind of fashion or another. At the same time, the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates too soon, too fast. My take on a lot of other analysts out there, they pivot. That would rock the stock market. But it could also rock companies who are purchasing all these chips, which is driving the revenue for Nvidia. This is a factor that I don't think a lot of people are really factoring in. Given that, Nvidia stock may have a bit more risk in the long term. I do not see a progressively higher price for Nvidia stock. I see a big turbulent event occurring in the US economy throughout 2025, and one of the casualties will be the revenue potential for Nvidia stock. NVDA may have seen its peak for now. I go back to SOXX ETF and inverse ETF on the semiconductor industry. I own Broadcom. I will be trading SOXX ETF regularly. Just put a video up on there. Make sure to take a look at that, because I break down how if the ETF, if the semiconductor industry does start to sell off, SOXX ETF starts to move up because it's inverse, and it does so at 3x. So if you are a day trader, that's one that could be, you should take a look at and put it in your books as something to consider going forward in 2025. This bull market has run too much, and the Federal Reserve is going to have to pivot. Plus, we have policy shifts which are going to be pivotal. And I think NVDA stock sells not because of Deepseek, but because it's overrun its growth rates, and the economy is likely to take a hiccup. How you do your analysis is how you do yours. I look at SOXX ETF, the inverse ETF for the semiconductor industry, and I'm going to take money on day trades with that as we see these semiconductors selling off. Make sure to hit that like and follow button. Grab my Substack newsletter as well, where I break all these kinds of things down. We'll see you in the next video.